You know, the funny thing is that you hear a lot of people complaining about how much their lives suck. You see a lot of envy, a lot of jealousy, a lot of people getting butthurt, especially in modern day witch wars and the way people have this outlook towards life. And yet, when you see somebody bettering themselves, there's a lot of envy, a lot of hate. And the reason for that is because you're falling out of resonance with that individual. Consider them to be fakes, enemies, whatever. Okay, people that are not meant to be in your life. They are more leeches than anything. Think of Anton Szandor LaVey's perspective on psychic vampirism. Okay, this particular saying goes with a lot of different aspects, from psychological warfare to mind games to the way people just use you and tag along just for, say, for an example, fortune and fame. You look at a lot of these celebrities today. Did you ever stop to wonder how they got there? They took a chance, they took a risk, they elevated themselves knowing that they were going to have to sacrifice a lot of freedoms. Because let's face it, when you become a celebrity, you don't have the freedom that most people do. Why? Because you're going to have paparazzi. Everybody's going to be looking at you. Okay? You don't have privacy unless you stay within the confines of your own home. But let's talk about somebody who's looking to benefit themselves. How does that work? First of all, you step away from drama, the dogma of society. You stop going along with the herd conformity, and you start elevating yourself above the dross. The reason for that is because of the fact you want to look at the areas of your life that can be improved upon. You don't want to build a skyscraper on a foundation to a house. It's just not going to stand the test of times. The trials, it's just going to be like a house of cards coming down, crumbling around you. Unfortunately, a lot of people, when they get into the desire to better themselves, either through witchcraft, spiritual conjuration, or finances, they think they don't really take the steps to understand the foundation that needs to be built. I believe it was, what's his name there? Robert Kiyosaki, who said it best. People need to understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. They need to understand the difference between a liability and an asset, a balance sheet and an income sheet. And I think this is actually true, and I believe that this is true because I've been applying his lessons to my own life. Okay. And what's interesting here is that even if you follow philosophers, historians, if you will, like Robert Greene, or say, for an example, that of Marcus Aurelius, you know, Seneca, Plato, Friedrich Nietzsche, Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Okay? Any way you look at it, there's always a way to master yourself, to master your world, to master your domain, and to better yourself in your understanding. So, what I would suggest to you is to reach out to people. Don't be afraid to look at somebody who's successful in a particular area. Let's say, for an example, you are looking at finances. Well, first, like I said, you'd want to look at assets and liabilities. What is a liability compared to what is an asset? Okay, if you look at somebody who just became a general manager for a department store, they've only been the only experience that this person has had was, say, for example, shift lead. They've never ran a warehouse before or a fast food restaurant outside of being a shift leader. So you don't have that financial knowledge that will help support your store. You only know what the upper management, such as district managers and regional managers and the owner and the brand name, the company, the main company, like say McDonald's, Walmart, Amazon, or let's say for an example Tesla. You know, you only know what the higher ups are telling you and showing you. You can go to school for years and learn about finances, but in the end of the day, you are trained to be an employee, not to be an employer. So you're following that guideline. It would be like being an apprentice to a superior mage. That superior mage is teaching his or her student their ways, how to do things, how to handle things. Have you ever gone to a Christian church and looked at how certain individuals carry themselves, how they present themselves? They always put on that front, that show. But in the end of the day, you can always tell who's more successful at being a con artist than somebody who's actually putting forth the actual work. Why? For an example, I knew this guy named Ray Townley. He drove around in a King Ranch full time. Beautiful truck. I had the honor and the privilege of driving this truck. I maintained this truck for this guy for almost a year. Okay. And it always surprised me at stores when he, myself, and some others were standing around and his wife drives in. Everybody's jaw drops when they see this truck. And then all of a sudden, they're completely baffled when a 5'4" woman jumps out of this truck. Blows their minds. Okay? How can a woman like that drive that? Right? Well, let's take a look at this. This man has been an evangelist for 15 years. He comes from a very strong religious foundation. Okay? So his beliefs are Pentecostal slash apostolic. Okay? So by the time he comes to Maine, he's already been an evangelist for 15 long years. He's done numerous talk shows. Okay? He has a wife, three daughters. Okay? And he's made connections all over the world. Okay? But then we look at, say, for an example, let's look at, I know this is going to be a touchy subject for you, but let's take a look at, say, for an example, Bobby Bledsoe. Okay? Those of you who have heard of City Reach, and I have spoken on this group before, it's a radical Christian group. Think Think of them like any terrorist group, if you will, that's out there, and they should be banned. I mean, the government should actually red flag City Reach if you know they were in their right minds. But here it is. Bobby Bledsoe was a player. He could talk the talk. He was a flashy dresser, and it was all for show. Didn't give a shit who he went over. Okay, he could make accusations. He could put anybody against you. Okay, until you hit that wall. Okay, he put $1.5 million into his sanctuary. Was getting ready to open up a second floor. All of a sudden, he lost that church because of the carelessness. It was condemned, unfit for human habitation. Now, here it is. He moves half mile up the road, does more. And then all of a sudden, he loses that place. He loses his lieutenants. About two of the three lieutenants just walk away. Most of his flock walks away. Penobscot County has banned him from having any kind of ministry in Penobscot County. His wife divorces him, takes their newborn daughter. He ends up becoming homeless, preaching out of his own car. That was as of 6 years ago. But Wade Townley, who's made a strong foundation in his belief, is now the pastor of a church. He started out as a guest, and now he's the actual minister of the church. He's on the fast track, moving up. But it comes down to who you know, and it comes down to who you're associated with. So remember that you are guilty of association. You want to hang out with people like Bobby Bledsoe that uses minors and everybody else trains them to be bullies, sociopaths, sneaks, and liars, con men and women, and have a very bad reputation. You're not going to be around long because sooner or later, somebody's going to destroy your world. But if you have a firm foundation and you build a foundation for a skyscraper and not a house, you'd be surprised what you can build. Now, I'm not a big fan of either one of these men, and I've spoken on this in the past. But if you're talking financial prosperity, you can align it with just about any biblical type scripture, be it the Satanic Bible, being uh, monetary gain. You can look at it as a business transaction of selling occult items, selling your services for a fee, because let's face it, financial prosperity has been associated with witchcraft going back hundreds of thousands of years. And it's even seen through history, theology, and folklore, not just archaeological and anthropology practices. But now you see it in a big time thing because when you think of tithing or you think of selling um, your soul, your time and energy, a lot of people just swing to Christianity because that's the biggest players out there. But you look at what they've sacrificed to get to where they're at. In just the United States alone, you have over 1,500 churches, chapels, and sanctuaries sitting vacant. That's just in the United States. Christianity used to be number one religion in the world. They used to be number one. Their forefathers had balls. They knew how to represent, and they did what needed to be done through conviction. These modern day ministers are nothing more than con men. Anything and everything could be an excuse to get your money. Okay? So when we talk financial prosperity, look at it from this perspective. What's the difference between an asset and a liability? I had a conversation with my mother about a month ago, just on this alone. Now, I listened to some friends of mine, I've listened to some teachers of mine, and I've gotten advice from other investors. Okay. So I have a pretty much a semi firm foundation under me when it comes to investing. Okay. And I'm talking probably about 2% of what anybody else knows that are more experienced than myself. Okay. Now, keep in mind, these people have been doing, the ones that have been teaching me have been doing this for years. I'm talking 10, 20, 40 years. Okay. So I'm a lightweight compared to them. So I sat down and I did some diagrams and I went over my own finances. I went over, I was sitting down with an individual that was trying to gain some money, and we were sitting there talking and we were going over everything. And while I was showing him what I'm putting out probably about 32, 31 to $3,300 a month. That's $3,300 a month max. But you look at what I'm raking in. Okay. Now, when all said is done, I have roughly about $200 of leeway. Okay. This is what we refer to as lucrative. Um, how should I say this? Lucrative. I forget the actual term for it, but it's play money, if you will. $200 worth of play money that you can use to, say, for an example, pay off debts, or, say, for an example, apply to something. So let's look at my case for an example. When you're going through investing and you're utilizing stocks, bonds, ETFs, and stuff like that, you look at what you know. Okay, let's look at assets. Number one, I know Amazon. Amazon is a good company. In fact, I get most of my books and my occult items from Amazon. Okay, at reasonable prices. Okay, so obviously, when I had a chance to get a free share, a free stock, I went with that. Okay, now here's the other thing. So then Carnival was recommended to me, LLC. So I did that. And about almost a year later, I got into Coinbase. Okay, I just applied to it, about $10 here and there. So here I am. I now have 3 shares within Amazon, 4 shares within Carnival. I just put down 2 shares of of Tesla and 1 share in Coinbase. Now, why did I only do one share in Coinbase? Coinbase is a lot like Bitcoin. That's basically a give or take. It's like 50-50, either succeed or fail. I'm not going to put too much stock in it. Now, when you go into technologies or you go into consumer goods, this is a given because it's always going to be there and it's always going to be advancements. So it's a strong foundation. Therefore, these would be classified as assets. Now, it's interesting to see. Let's look at a liability. You have credit cards. Okay, let's say, for an example, you got an Amazon credit card and your max is about $100. You have a home. A lot of people think you own your own home. That's an asset. It's actually one of your greatest liabilities. And this is something that Robert said in one of his books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And this was a book that was actually recommended to me. I now own most of his books and I've read them, I've studied them, and I'm still collecting his books today. This man is a genius. I mean, I'm even following Elon Musk. Okay. So you want to delve into education just like you would with witchcraft, just like you'd like to do with your religious studies, your practices, learning about your legal laws, your rights. Okay. So all of this is a firm foundation so that you can have that understanding and constantly update your understanding and your how should I say this, IQ, if you will, when it comes to these practices. So, like I said, if you're trying to make a skyscraper out of a foundation for a house that's meant for maybe two, three stories, you're not going to go very far because one earthquake, one storm, it's going to be like a house of cards. It's all coming down. There's an old expression: don't put all your ducks in one pen. They're going to come out bloody. Okay? Proven fact. It's like a cockfight. Interesting to see one of those. But here it is. So I started learning about financial prosperity. I started delving in, looking at what an asset is. Now, if you buy a house, you think, okay, this is good. It's now mine. But now you got maintenance, you got property tax, you got the upkeep. Okay. You got the overall value of that foundation and that land. You got a whole bunch of different types of taxes that go along with it. You got repairs, maintenance type aspects from plumbing, electrical, so you're putting out 10 times more than what you're bringing in. So, how does this relate to witchcraft? Think of it like this. If you focus all your energy on a particular result while doing an invocation or an evocation, let's say, for an example, you're doing a hex. The individual who has been wronged has the deeper connection to the intended target. Now, if that individual learned the platform of witchcraft, sorcery, be it necromancy, be it, say, for an example, Santet, which is Indonesian black magic, okay, be it Pedo Mayumbi, calling on the Orisha, or say, for an example, you're working with the Loa, go with the Petro spirits, okay, go with Simbi or Keflu, for an example, and learn what demonic entities can be called upon to seek that retribution, to balance those scales. You do the rites, you put down the VVs, you put down the seal, the sigils, you light the incense, the candles, you get in there, you meditate upon the issue, you start chanting, building up that energy, you go into it, you call forth that spirit, You have your Dibbit box ready, your curse jar. You have the effigy of the individual. You have as much information as possible, and you go for it. You'd be one badass motherfucker. Okay, one badass motherfucker right there, because it's your emotion, it's your intent, it's your desire that fuels that prosperity. Now, if you took that same fuel and you applied it to your education, you can constantly better yourself, constantly learning about new ways to make money, new ways to improve your connection to Deitas, new ways to improve your life and to better your life. For an example, one of those lieutenants that is still around today from City Reach, he called me over one day, and I spoke on this in the past video, and he tried to bring the same shit talk my way. And I looked at him and I said, "That's your little minivan there, all rusted out?" I mean, I'm talking, it looked like somebody just took it into a body shop, stripped the paint down. It was, rusty. It was broken down. There was no work to it. This guy's dressed in sweatpants and what, sweatshirt, t-shirt. He looked raggedy, like a homeless person. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you follow Christianity, what was it that their Messiah said? Okay, lay up all your treasures in heaven and follow me. Basically, give up everything and follow me. Live humbly, right? But yet, how many stories within the Bible show the level of prosperity where you have good suits, you have a good home, you've got money? Look at King Solomon, look at King David, look at Abraham, aka Abram. Should I go on? Look at what he did for Moses, even. Okay? But when you corrupt that and you start getting into liabilities, then you end up like the Pharisees. You end up like King David, who's got so much blood on his hands, he can't even get into heaven. Okay? You got Paul, who literally says, I'm a Pharisee. But then all of a sudden, something changes his mind, gets his attention, and now he's a believer. Or how about Jonah in the whale? You see the point there, especially from a biblical perspective, of laying that firm foundation. If you listen to those who are experienced, if you're willing to take that chance, take the steps necessary to educate yourself, to dress yourself appropriately, to be respectful. Okay, wearing $1,000 suit, like say Stratton or Stafford, you know, what's that other kind there, Yamami or whatever it's called, type suit. Cool. Or you could just be like one of those billionaires, like what's his name? The guy that's the founder of Facebook there that wears, tennis shoes, jeans and a sport coat. You know, it's kind of like Class B military style dress up, but still, you look at the respect. He looks professional, but he's clean cut, shaven beard. He's presenting himself, his company, his finances, his way of life. Then you go to an apostolic church and you see how they're putting on the show. They're calling it a brotherhood, but yet when you get right down to it, it's all about moolah. Okay, you either do what they say or you're an omega. Okay, one of the key outlooks of an omega, if you will, you can go back to the Knights of Templar And look up the Knights of Templar, known as the Forsaken. Okay, these were knights that literally said "fuck you" to God, and literally was practicing black magic like necromancy and witchcraft and sorcery, conjuration type stuff. Okay, and they even worked for the Vatican, and they worked for the kings. There was actually one story where these knights were sent out to find a company that had been missing for like 33 days. They went up against an entire army, and they were the only ones left standing. Why? It is because they had the knowledge, they had the wisdom, they had educated themselves, they grew their skills, they mastered their skills. And this took time. This took years of study and practice. Now, keep in mind, I've been doing financing and stuff like this, things that deal with stocks, bonds, investing for a little over a year and a half now, just a year and a half. And I've already seen the benefits. My son's mother always comes to me for money. I used to have ups and downs. I used to get frustrated because I didn't have that knowledge when it came to money. But once I figured out the keys to it, I started experimenting. And yes, Robert's books are pivotal key components there because he lays it out so simplistically. And it's through your basic life experiences. I related to his work more than anybody else's. Why? Because he put it through applications of real world events, things that you would actually see transpire in the real world. Okay? For an example, I used to sit out and watch people. I used to watch people just they're hurrying through life, going from point A to point B, always just studying. They're facing a book or in a phone. And it's like, don't you just want to stop and smell the roses? Walk through nature and enjoy life. Why do you want to work yourself harder than what you need to? I once had a shift leader who told me, work smarter, not harder. Work smarter, not harder. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Think of it this way. If you take a bucket, you fill it with ice, and you take it over to an oasis, and you dump that ice into that bucket, into that oasis, it fills it up for a moment. But let's say, for an example, you have a ice box on wheels. Once you take that ice box over to the cooler and fill it, keep it right over by that oasis. That way, when you need the ice, it's right there. And it lasts a good 12 to 24 hours. You see the point. Work smarter, not harder. Why would you stop in the middle of a rush to go get ice when you can have two ice coolers right there by the drink making machines, where you make the drinks, where you make the frozen coffees, the iced coffees? Wow, right there. You don't have to go far. Now, if you download an app that will help teach you and guide you along your investing phase, like say Robinhood, or say for an example, one of those that app there that Elon Musk has put forth that has the AI that's like 98% a true thing. Now, I could have gone that way, but I don't know that technology. So the best way for me to take a risk is to go with the companies I know. Now you consider today I was underneath Robinhood. Carnival is down into the red. This would be a great time to purchase Carnival stocks for a low price. Now we're talking cruise ships, building, construction, cruises themselves. This is what Carnival LLC is. Okay? But let's go to Amazon. Amazon was down too, a little bit. Just above the line, but not equal with the line. Either above, just above that line. So they were doing pretty good. But here's the thing. Even though they were like $160 per share in the green, you go to Carnival and you can get it as $10 a share. As low as $10 because it's in the negative. It's in the red. But then you go underneath, say, VTI, VTU, something like that. And they're doing awesome. Technology's going good. It's going strong. So where it's lacking in one, which could be classified as a liability, you could sell it for a few things. But let's say, for an example, you let it sit. You do the smart thing. You let it sit for like 2, 3, let's say up to 5 years. Okay, even 20 years if you're patient enough. Okay. Opal, you're on Daddy's laptop. Sorry. Yeah, I got my pup with me right now, so she's cuddling with Daddy. So I apologize. Um, so let's say, for an example, you got the patience to just tweak these accounts and to observe them and to either trade them or prune them, if you will, along a long period of time. Imagine how much stock you can actually get. So, day before yesterday, I purchased a share of Tesla. The following day, I ended up with 260, was it 65, $67 worth of a share. Now, since then, I've also gotten at least 3 dividend. Okay, basically, what is a dividend? It's like a fraction of the income, like say 0.001 or 0.040, say 76 type share. Okay, and I'm just throwing out a couple numbers there. So here you have a choice when you get a certain amount built up. Why don't you reinvest those dividend back into the company? As I explained to my mother, I said, and to my son's grandfather, I said, think about it. Even Chuck Norris said in an episode of Walker, you take 1 penny, put it in a container. The next day, you add 2 pennies. And you do this for 90 days. You keep doubling it. How much do you have at the end of that 90 days? 1 penny turns into 2 pennies. 2 pennies turn into 4 pennies. 4 pennies turn into 8 pennies. And so forth and so forth and so forth. And that's just your loose change that you have lying around at the end of the day. Now, if you're investing this stuff, why not put these back into the companies and get more bang for your buck? You see, a teacher will take on an apprentice that's worth their time. You can always spot a fake, a wannabe, somebody who just wants to play games a mile away. There's always those key factors. those identifying markers, if you will, such as catchphrases. If you are on a dating site, for an example, and all of a sudden you get these people coming to you wanting to be with you, and then all of a sudden the excuses start. So now you get the word, you identified three key things. The word such as baby, dear, whatever. You got them asking you for money, like say topping off is what they call it, for you to pay them gas money to come see you or to go out on a date with you. Um, you got, you know, you pay them for their time, stuff like that. That's the modern dating world these days. This is why I keep my ass out of that world because I don't really give a shit about it. So, but the third marker is that's when the excuses start. Because even if you do pay them, they want more. They want to see what you're willing to give them. Even as a couple, a woman in today's society wants to know what a man is willing to give them, like a sugar daddy type thing. This is why I don't do anything with dating. I don't even like relationships. But that's another thing that you have to learn. It's called education. Plus, you want to make sure that legal action doesn't get involved because of that. So, because there are laws of the land, remember that. So, anyways, so when I look at my son's mother, okay, she comes to me with anything, and I mean anything, either for money, she'll come to me and say, well, I don't have the money to pay for the car insurance. Well, here's $367.89. Boom, paid off. Wow, I'm going to be short on my rent. How much do you need? Well, here it is. How do you always have money? Well, for one, I'm not going out and doing liabilities. Credit cards, for an example, credit cards are your greatest weakness. Okay? Because so many people look at it and go, well, I can just purchase all this stuff and pay it off later. 4 years, she finally paid off her credit card. 4 years. My credit kept going up and down, but it never left the 600s. I always had money because I always put a certain amount to the side. Always. Even when I was younger, was getting paid, say for an example, $200. I'd always put like $20 aside. And over a certain amount of time, I had $1,000, $2,000 set aside. I can whip up $300 within about 2 to 3 weeks. Bam, done. That was 3 paychecks. Done. And that's just doing part-time job. That's just part-time work. Okay? Even in my youth. But now that I'm getting into stocks, investing, learning about self-betterment, following ideals like the 48 laws of power, getting into philosophies such as Marcus Aurelius, the Book of Meditations, getting into Sun Tzu's The Art of War, you know, getting into the philosophies of, say, Friedrich Nietzsche, things that I relate with, things that I relate to, getting into an actual lifestyle and applying it to my life. I'm putting all this stuff to my life. Well, guess what? I'm living comfortably. I'm living comfortably. Why? I'm not spending money that I don't need to. I'm not going to go out there and go, oh, that would look good in my bathroom. I'm going to go buy this little stand and go, oh, here it is. Okay. Well, oh, I like this picture frame. I'm going to put it in the living room. Or oh, I need a new comforter. Well, yeah, this is another $50 to $100. Next thing you know, you got what is known as the creep bracket. And this is a financial term. This is where everything that you think is an asset gets flipped around. What you think is good debt turns out to be bad debt. And that's what hinders you. That's what hinders you. But it's a matter of that financial understanding. Okay, you're an occultist, you're a magi, you're a necromancer, you're a witch, you're a voodooizant, you're a polero, a marimberos, a brua, whatever. You're a druid, a shaman. You need money to go out and purchase the items that you need, but you want to be able to provide for your temple, for the spirits that you work with. A lot of these African Caribbean traditions normally would go out and get a green card. So, or what do they refer to that as? I want to say it's a green card type thing, not the citizenship one. I'm talking like a food stamp type thing, like a food thing where they can get all kinds of meats and stuff, and they always apply those meats and those animals to their practice. And that's the ironic part here, is because there's all kinds of ways that you can do that, but is it beneficial in the long run? If you don't have that firm foundation under you and you're building on assets, understanding the outcome and income of your financial investments, if you don't have that knowledge of note taking and keeping track of what you're putting out, say, and what you're bringing in. It's like, say, for an example, your income sheet versus your data sheet or your balance sheet. Okay, you have that financial understanding of what an asset is and a liability. Good debt versus bad debt. What's lucrative and what is not. You got to be able to take a stance of, okay, there is going to be some acceptable risks. You don't have to play it safe all the time, because if you played it safe all the time, you wouldn't get anywhere. And let's face it, you got the last generations, like, say, those they were born in the 40s, 50s, 60s, they were taught to play it safe, because back then you had organized crime, you got all these scammers and stuff like that, extortionists. So they play it safe. But in today's market, you got to remember that it's not the same market as back then. It's not the same market as the 1970s. It's not the same market as the 1990s or the early 2000s. Every time an event happens, that market changes. So you got to keep up to date on that. And that's where the financial IQ comes in. And that's something that I've been learning and really applying to my life as well. And I highly advise you to do the same for yourself, because by building on that firm foundation, you're able to create that skyscraper, that empire. And now I have repeated clientele that come to me. I have repeated individuals that come to me. Okay, or just some food for thought. Okay, think about that, and until next time, have fun.